Hello, I'm Marrisa Trachtenberg, the Director of Risk Management and Policy Compliance, part of the Division of Enterprise Risk Management at Stony Brook University. Today, I am going to walk you through our travel registry policy that is part of Concur and take you through a few examples. The travel registry is to be used to register international travel plans when going abroad on university-related business when you're not using state, research foundation, or SBF funds. This includes university-related travel being paid for by a third party. So, for example, an organization is paying expenses for faculty to speak at a conference. This also includes trips that are paid for with personal funds where reimbursement is not being sought. If paying with RF, state funds, or SBF funds, even if it's only a penny, do not use this registry. To get started, let's visit Procurement's Travel and Card Programs website to log into Concur. If you're not familiar with Concur, please refer to the directions for logging in. So let's get started. I'll have to have my Stony Brook ID number handy in order to do this. So I'm going to punch in my number at stonybrook.edu and click Next. I'll then be brought to the single sign-on page where I'll have to duo. Now that I'm in Concur, let's get started. The very first thing I'll need to do is start a new request. So at the top, you'll see New, Start a Request. Now, let's first start by walking through the registry. First things first, we'll need to click on the Travel Registry Policy. Now, there are a number of item types. The information that's being collected will help us, ERM, understand your travel plans. So, first off, trip name. If I hover over this tooltip, you'll see that there is a guide on how to enter your trip name. So, for best practices, we will first enter city, then purpose, followed by date. Trip start date. This is, of course, the date that you're leaving for the trip, followed by your trip end date, or when you're returning. Primary destination city. If I hover over this tooltip, you'll get some additional quick help. So, enter the primary destination city that's being traveled to. If there are additional locations during the trip, you'll need to enter this information on the following screen. We'll get to that in a moment. After entering your primary destination city, the destination country should fill automatically. But you'll need to tell us, is this a domestic trip or international? For our purposes, we'll focus on international trips. The next question, are multiple people traveling on this trip? If yes, you'll need to enter a roster. More on that in a moment. Are multiple cities being visited? Again, yes or no. Are you attending this trip? If you are, of course you'll select yes. If you're not, and you're entering this trip for someone else, please select no. Traveler type. Who is the traveler? Is it a faculty member? Perhaps a staff member? A graduate student? If there's more than one person and different traveler types on the trip, you'll have to pick only one. If one of those happens to be a student, please select student. Funding source. You'll need to pick which funding source is being used. Is it a third party? Perhaps personal? If you select RF, SBF, or state funds, you're in the incorrect lane, and you won't be able to submit your request. Trip purpose. You'll need to pick the option that fits best. Perhaps the traveler is going to a conference, maybe a meeting. Maybe one of these options doesn't fit. You can select other and provide additional information in the justification section that's coming up. In this section, which is required, you'll need to provide us with a synopsis of your travel plans. Please don't be afraid to give us details. Does this trip contain personal travel? Another yes/no question. If you answered yes, please give us the dates of personal travel. Now, I'm going to walk you through several examples to highlight how to use the registry. So let's get started. Example 1. This is an example of a faculty member who's entering their own travel plans. You're traveling alone and you're only going to one destination. So we're going to call this Training Test 1, and let's go to Canada. We're going to pick a start date in the future, so September 18th, and returning September 25th. Now, the primary destination city is Toronto. And you'll see Canada fills automatically. Of course, this is an international trip. Are multiple people traveling? No. Are multiple cities being visited? No. Are you attending this trip? Yes. Traveler type, I'm a faculty member. And funding source. So let's say I accidentally hit state funds. Let's see what happens. Trip purpose, I'm going to a conference, and I'm going to say attending academic conference. And there's no personal travel, so no dates of personal travel to enter. So once all of the information is selected, I will then hit create request. And you'll see that I have an alert. So here I had mentioned that I was traveling on state funds. So the system caught that and said, you're in the wrong lane. So how do I fix this? I'm going to go back into my request and I'm going to update my funding source because you know what? It actually was a third party paying for me. So once I update that information, that red alert cleared and there's nothing else for me to do except submit my request. So when I hit submit request, you'll always get a message that explains the following information. You've entered all your information. You've indicated whether you're traveling on the trip or if you're going with anyone else. And most importantly, you'll note that this information is being shared with Enterprise Risk Management for review, and we may share it with other offices. If there are questions, please contact ERM and you'll see our email address on the screen. I can accept and continue. And that's it. My request is entered. Let's move on to the second example. So, in this example, I'm a faculty member entering my own travel plans again, but this time I'm going to multiple destinations because there's personal travel. So, I'm going to name this Training Test 2, still going to Canada. We're going to pick a date in the future. September 18th, returning the 25th, and I'm still in Toronto. Canada, I select international. I'm alone, so no, multiple people are not traveling, but yes, multiple cities are being visited. I am entering my own travel, so yes, I'm attending this trip. Again, I'm a faculty member, traveling on third-party funds or personal funds, also works in this example. I'm going to a conference, and I'm going to say attending academic conference. Does this trip contain personal travel? Yes. And my travel will be on 9/23/23. Okay, so now I click create request and I'm brought to the next screen. So here I need to enter additional information because I have an additional location. So under expected expenses, I will click add additional location and details. So I'm going to enter that I am going to Buffalo, New York, just over the border. And again, I'm going on the 25th and returning to Toronto the same day. Pardon me, the 23rd. Detail, visiting colleagues and family. I save my information, and now you'll see additional location and details appears on the screen, I'm ready to submit my request. I have no pending red alerts. I can accept and continue. And that's it. Now let's move on to example 3. Here, a faculty or staff member is entering travel on behalf of another faculty or staff member. This scenario is applicable for faculty and staff who are submitting travel plans for another person, or if there are multiple travelers in one party. Both scenarios will require submission of a roster. Please note, if there are multiple travelers, each person has the option of submitting their own travel plans individually, which we went through in examples 1 and 2. If there are multiple travelers, but you're only entering information for one person, please select no when asked if multiple people are traveling on this trip. In the justification section, you can provide additional information that indicates other travelers will enter their own information. The other option is to submit an all-inclusive roster for all travelers. We'll walk through that example now for 2 faculty and staff members. So, trip name. Let's call this Training Trip 3, and this time, let's go to Italy. Let's pick a date in the future. September 18th, returning on the 25th, and let's go to Rome. Destination country, Italy, of course, autofills. We'll select international travel. Are multiple people traveling? Let's select yes. Are multiple cities being visited? Let's also select yes. Again, that's going to require me to add additional locations on the next screen. Are you attending this trip? No. Why? I'm entering this travel for someone else. So what's the traveler type? Again, 2 faculty members or 2 staff members or a combination thereof. You pick one. Funding source. Here, let's select other. Trip purpose, attending meetings. And then in the justification section, we'll write attending college-related meetings. And then we can enter more information as well. Does this trip contain personal travel? Not in this example, so no dates required. Now we'll click on Create Request and go to the next screen. So here, this alert is reminding me that a roster will be required if entering information for other travelers. So let's first add additional locations. Here, we're going to put in that we're going to Florence. But let's test the system and not put that information and see what happens. We will add a roster though. So here we're going to click on attendees. And since I've entered travel before, I'm going to add from a list of recent individuals. So here, let's say Sarah Jane and John Smith. I will add to list. Close this out. Hit save. And you'll see I now have 2 attendees. Now, if I go to submit my request, I'm not going to find myself in a successful position. Why? I forgot to add that other location I was going to. So this alert will remind you that if you indicated travel to multiple cities, you must add additional locations. So let's go back. We're going to add additional locations. Here, let's say we're going to Florence. And you might get this message about currency. It's something you can ignore. Just hit the blue button. And we'll put the dates that will be in this other location, which is all the same day. September 21st, and then I can click Save. So now you'll see that I have additional location details saved and the roster. I now can go ahead and click Submit Request, and I should be successful. Let's move on to our fourth and final example. Here, we have a staff member who will be entering group travel for themselves and students. So this includes travel that's outside of study abroad. So for instance, a registered club or organization that has been approved to travel internationally. So undergraduate students do not have profiles in Concur, so the staff member must enter travel on their behalf. So let's walk through that example. We are going to call this trip Training Trip 4, and this time Bermuda is the destination. This trip will not happen until next year, so January 1, 2024, and they're staying for a week. Primary destination city is Hamilton. Pardon the error. Hamilton, Bermuda pops up. Country fills, and it's an international destination. Are multiple people traveling on this trip? Yes, it's a group. Are multiple cities being visited? No, they're staying in one location. Are you attending this trip? So in this example, we're going to say no. Let's assume the students are traveling without a staff or faculty member, but their advisor is entering that information for them. Traveler type, undergraduate students. What's their funding source? Let's say USG. Trip purpose, we're going to say other. And here, detailed information could be provided. Let's say the rugby club is participating in a tournament. There's no personal travel. If there were, of course, we'd select yes and put in the dates of personal travel and maybe some additional information too. So now we'll click on Create Request, and we need to add a roster. No additional locations in this example since we're staying on site in Hamilton. When we go to click roster, again, students are not in Concur. So we'll have to click on attendees and manually add a roster using the Excel option. If we go to import attendees, you click on upload spreadsheet and simply add an Excel file that includes first name, last name, Stony Brook ID number, email address, and the status of each participant. In other words, are they a graduate student, undergraduate student? If a staff member were traveling, you'd indicate staff. So we'll go ahead and close that out. Upon submitting the roster, you would just click Save. The roster would then appear on the screen here, and you would hit Submit Request. Thank you for watching this training video. Additional registry information can be found on the FAQ section of Procurement's Travel and Card Programs website under Concur FAQs. If you have questions, please feel free to call or email Enterprise Risk Management. You'll see our contact information on the screen. We can be reached at 631-632-9500 or by emailing enterprise_risk_management@stonybrook.edu.